In 2014, a crack toy fixer was banished from the forums for talking about repairing vintage toys. Undeterred, this man promptly set up his own YouTube channel located in the Somerset Underground. Today, still wanted by hardcore Star Wars collectors, he survives as a maverick toy restorer. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find him, maybe toy-polloi can help you. Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and today we're going to be looking at fixing up this G.I. Joe Bullet Man figure. On the left you can see this is my UK version of Bullet Man. This is the Action Man version of Bullet Man, and very kindly recently Christopher and Carrie sent me the remains of the US version. So this is G.I. Joe Bullet Man. If you want to see that unboxing, then head on over to my second channel, toy-polloi 2, which is where you will find all of my unboxings from now on, and also a whole host of other videos. They very kindly sent me this figure, as you can see, and he's in a little bit of a sorry state because his arms have fallen off. He's missing a few bits. We needed to do a fair bit of work to get him up and running. There are some interesting differences between these two figures, between the UK Palitoy version and the US G.I. Joe Hasbro version, and we'll take a look at those as we go through the process of getting him back up and ready for display. So let's take a look at what we've got. This is what Christopher and Carrie sent me. So we've got the bare body of the figure. As is often the case with these figures, the elastic that holds the arms on has perished, and that means that the arms fall off, and they actually fall apart because the elastic goes all the way through the elbow joint down to the hand. So in this instance we've got the upper biceps, but then we have no other parts of the arms. But I do luckily have some spares of those, so we will be able to sort of put those in place of the missing parts. The elastic on the lower part of the legs often seems to survive quite well. So on this one, it's actually in remarkably good condition. You can see just in there is some sort of flesh coloured elastic, so you can see it clearly down there on the ankle. On the UK version of this, that elastic is actually black, but on this Hasbro version, the G.I. Joe version from America, you can see they've gone for a flesh colour, so it's harder to see. So we need to repair his arms. We've also got his outfit. That is missing the emblem on the front. It does also need a bit of a clean. It's fairly dirty. We are missing the belt from that as well. We do have his boots, as you can see here, and these are again different to the UK version. I'll show you that later. But we are missing his helmet. There should be a silver helmet. In fact, if I just grab the one off my UK version, we have this silver bullet shaped helmet, so we need to sort out a replacement of that as well. But the first thing we're going to do is actually give it all a good clean. So his head here, there seems to be sort of some bits of grime and dirt sort of ground in there, especially around his eyes. I'm not quite sure what that is. It feels quite sort of scratchy, almost like it's calcified or something like that. So maybe he was dunked in water at some time where we've got some sort of calcification going on. Anyway, that will all clean off, and we've got some dirt and grime on his body. So I'll give all of that a good clean. The boots as well have little black marks and stuff on, so I'll hopefully get all of those off. We will also give this a wash again. Just some hot soapy water should get some of these marks out and make it feel a bit fresher. It's not too dirty, but you can sort of feel that it is dirty. And this whole thing, you know, it's over 40 years old, so it's bound to have some dirt and grime on it. So let's give everything a good clean, and then we can start sorting out the parts that we need to put him back together, getting his arms on, getting his head on, and then sorting out all the bits of missing clothing. So give him a good clean first, and then we'll get started on the rest. After a good clean, it's starting to look pretty nice actually. The marks and stuff on the head all came off. I wasn't quite sure what it was, but as soon as I dunked it in the water, it all dissolved. So we've ended up with a really nice looking head, just with a few minor paint rubs on the back there, and you can see a few on his eyebrows, but we'll sort those out later. And the rest of the body is looking nice, as are the boots. I got all the black marks that were on the bottom of the boots. Those have gone, so they're good to go. We can now go ahead and start putting this back together, but obviously we're missing a few pieces. So we have the two biceps here, and I've shown you before in the previous Bullet Man restoration, and also in the Tom Stone restoration, how these bodies are sort of constructed. And it's a bit of elastic that's got to go all the way through the body. So you essentially put a bit of elastic in the neck hole there, comes out of the arm, goes in the top of this arm here, down the bottom through the elbow, then back up through here, then back through the body, out the other side, and you do the same process again. So through this, down through the elbow, back up, back in, and back out of the head, and then you sort of tie it through the neck post. So everything is connected by one piece of elastic, which is why when it breaks, everything falls off. But obviously we're missing the lower arms, but luckily I kept some. Last time I did a restoration on this, on my original Bullet Man, I fixed up a couple of arms that I had that were very broken. They were missing fingers, and I spent a long time reconstructing those fingers using milliput and bits of wire. But I kept those because I was given another pair of arms to put on my main Bullet Man. So I have those here. I've got a box here with all the spare pieces that I kept from that previous restoration. And you can see I have those two arms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the lower arms from these and use them on the upper arms. So we have the original Hasbro US version of the arm, and then the Palitoy lower arm. At some point maybe I'll get the proper arms. There's a subtle colour difference. You can see this is a slightly bluer chrome and this is a slightly yellower chrome. I think that's because the plastic is slightly yellowed on these ones, but the overall effect will be good. So we're going to use those lower arms but with the original upper arms. Before we can get threading though, we need to remove the old rubber that's still in here. If I shake this, you can hear there's stuff rattling around, and actually if you look in the end you can still see the old rubber. So I'm going to have to get a screwdriver and carefully break that up until it falls out of the bottom of this. So we just need to be able to get the elastic through, and with that old bit of rubber in there it's not going to work. So yeah, let's get that all taken out and then we can actually start threading this through. I'm not going to go through the whole process again. I'll do a sort of quick montage of what happens, but it's essentially the same as I've shown you previously. Elastic all the way through, all the way around, all the way back, and then tied up at the top, and we'll get this figure together. But first we've got to empty these out. I bought myself a new tool a long time ago, having seen it on a TV show, a medical TV show, funny enough, not even something to do with toys. And I've been wanting to use them, also waiting for an opportunity to use them. And they're proving really useful for this project, because getting the old bits of rubber out of these is quite hard going. So these are called alligator forceps. You can see here they've got a tiny little sort of gripping thing at one end, a little pair of claws, and you open these sort of scissor end up and they grip. So you can get these into incredibly tiny spaces, and I'm using those to carefully pull out the bits of old rubber and plastic that are inside these biceps. So I'm really glad that I sort of bought these. I bought them not knowing what I would use them for, and this is the first time they have been of use, and they're proving very useful indeed. After much digging about and scraping, this is all of the stuff that I got out of these two biceps. You can see there's an awful lot of bits of old perished rubber in there. These alligator forceps proved remarkably useful. They were doing a very good job of being able to grip the sort of various bits of rubber, but I also used other tools like tweezers and a small screwdriver that I could just sort of break these elements up, because in the end you've got to get them out of this small hole at the bottom. So these are now all clean, there's nothing left inside them, they don't rattle, and I can go ahead and start putting the arms and the head back on the body. As I say, this is just going to be done using elastic, so this is some 3mm elastic. I've got a small piece of beading wire which I'll wrap around the end of the elastic to help me thread it all through, and it's the same process that I showed in the previous video, so if you want to see the full process, do check that out. But it will take about 5 to 10 minutes to get it all threaded through, and we can then attach the arms and the head back on the body. and here he is all back together. It did take pretty much 10 minutes to get it all strung up, but you can see he now stands really quite nicely. The only extra thing I do when stringing these guys is I put a tiny bit of extra elastic just under there. So I basically cut a small bit, maybe about a centimetre long, turn it into a U shape and push it in underneath there. If you don't do that, it has a tendency for the arms to sit inwards like that because there's nothing to sort of hold them in place. If you put that bit of elastic there, they tend to have this nicer angle to them. You'll see me do this in my previous restoration. It just helps this figure look a little bit more sort of natural when it stands. So now, before I sort out the clothes, I'm going to do the tiny little paint repairs. So we've got a few little marks on his eyebrows and one little mark on the back of his head. For that, I'm using some acrylic paint. So I've got my Vallejo acrylics. This is a black 70.950. I use that to touch everything up. And then once it's all dry, I'm going to put this satin varnish on, which again is a Vallejo colour, and this is 70.522. That will make the sort of sheen of it match the sheen of this paint. You can see it's got a nice sort of, not glossy, but a sort of a satin finish to it. So let's get those little bits touched up, then we'll deal with the clothing. Now we come on to Bullet Man's leotard, and actually overall this is in not bad condition. It's got a few little bobbles on it and there's a little mark there, but I think that actually might end up being hidden by the badge. And then there's a few sort of loose threads, so I'm just going to go around and trim off those loose threads. I'm not going to worry about the bobbles on it. This is a very old outfit, and I think those bobbles sort of add to the age of it. There doesn't appear to be any tears in it, and none of the seams have come apart, which is normally what happens on these old outfits. So yeah, overall I think it's actually not in too bad condition. It is of course missing the emblem on the front. Now in my previous video I made an emblem for the Bullet Man because it was missing, and how I did that was creating a new file in Photoshop and then printing it onto some iron-on printer paper, then ironed it onto some fabric and then put some sticky tape on the back of that and stuck it onto the outfit, and I ended up with a very nice looking badge. This time I'm going down a slightly different route because I have some new printer paper which is fabric based. So this is a fabric printer paper and it's got a sticky back to it. So you can see here I printed out my version of the Bullet Man logo onto this printer paper. I've actually already cut one out, so this is what we're going to be sticking on the front of this outfit. There are a few other reproductions available and I have a couple of them here, but I have to say they're not the greatest. This one here is probably the closest, but it's too small. This one here is actually just a sticker and it's way too detailed and again too small. So if you want the correct version, go to toy-polloi.com. You can download this file and print it out yourself and you'll end up with this. I can show you an original here. This is an original Bullet Man badge and this is my reproduction, so it's as close as you're going to get. It's the right size and the right colours, and now that this is printed on fabric we can attach it to the front of this leotard. But there is a slight difference with these two outfits. You can see this one here, the logo is pointing upwards, and that's because this is a Palitoy version of Bullet Man's leotard. The G.I. Joe versions actually have the bullet pointing off to one side, and that's how I'm going to stick it onto this. So it's got to be pointing off to the right like that. If you see a Palitoy one, they're generally pointing up. There is a little bit of discrepancy in them because obviously these are stuck on by people in factories, so they were just quickly sticking these stickers on. But in general, Palitoy ones point vertically and the G.I. Joe ones point off to the right. So that's what we'll do here. So again, all we've got to do is take off the backing for this, which should be easy enough to do. Like so. As I say, this is a fabric-based printer paper. It's quite useful to have for doing things like this. And I'm going to stick this right on the front. You can see there's a seam down the front, so I'll line it up with that. Is that exactly in the middle? Doesn't look like it's quite in the middle on this one, so I'll just do it a little bit by eye. And I'm going to put this pointing off to the right, like that. And there we go. That is the emblem attached. So I'll get this outfit onto Bullet Man, and then we can sort out the missing belt.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle.
For Bullet Man's belt, I'm doing exactly what I did in the previous video, which is using an existing Action Man belt just to get the clasps off the end. I picked this up at a toy fair recently. I think I only paid about £1 for it. So I'm going to carefully undo the sewing at the end of this belt and take these little clips off, and we'll use that to construct this new belt. And this new belt is just made out of elastic. I still have the same elastic that I bought for last time I did this. In fact, I've still got 2 meters of it because I only used a small piece to make this belt, and I've not used it for anything else. So this is elastic that is about 11 millimeters across. It's quite a thick sort of a piece of elastic, but that's how the belt should look. So I'm going to cut a length of this off and then sew the ends on, so sew the new clasps off of this on, and that will create a new belt for this Bullet Man. Now we come to the boots on this Bullet Man, and you'll notice that there are some big differences here. The UK Palitoy issue of Bullet Man comes with these boots that are made of a firmer plastic. They're a lot more like the sort of a standard Action Man boots, but these have these jet packs added to the back of them. I guess it makes Bullet Man seem that little bit more futuristic. The boots that come with the G.I.Joe version, to me, look a lot more like Superman's boots. They're a very simple boot. They've got a slight sort of angle on the top of it, and they're made of a sort of rubbery type material, and there's not much detail to them. In fact, you can see they're very plain indeed. But this is the big difference between the two toys. We've got the UK version here with these jet packs, and then the US version with these fairly plain boots. They both do the job, but I actually think the UK version is much better. It just makes this guy look a lot more sci-fi and a lot more futuristic. And then the final thing we need to make this Bullet Man look like Bullet Man is his helmet. Now these are 2 reproductions of his helmet. I got these in the previous video. If you check out those to see where that came from. One of them I sent away to Gold Solutions Plating, and they chrome plated this. So this one is plated in metal, and you can see we ended up with this really lovely shiny finish, and it's got quite a weight to it because it is fully sort of metal plated. The other one I painted using some Molotow liquid chrome pens, and you can see this chrome finish really doesn't look too bad at all. It's certainly not up to this proper metal plating, but the overall effect of it is really quite nice. So I'm going to be using this one on the G.I.Joe version, and this one will go on the Palitoy version, but the overall effect is they look really quite nice. There is a subtle difference between the helmets from the UK and the US version. The US version should have slightly smaller eye holes, but I don't have a version of that. I don't have a reproduction, so I'm going to be using the Palitoy version on this. Maybe in future I'll find a reproduction of the US one and I can swap it out, but as it stands I think these will look rather good on the figures, and it will just complete that look. And so here they both are all complete. On the left is my original Palitoy version, and on the right we have the Hasbro G.I.Joe version of Bullet Man, and he's looking rather lovely. It's taken a little bit of work, but it's been interesting to go back and sort of re-look at the project that I'd done, you know, a few years back to see if I do anything different. And as it turns out, I haven't done anything different. It's exactly the same techniques and methods I've been using to restring the body, tidy up the paintwork, and sort of get everything looking as it should. And I'm really pleased to now have both versions of this figure in my collection. They look pretty much the same from the front, but there's nice little subtle differences between the two figures, and that's why it's quite nice to have both of them so I can sort of show them and compare the two. The main one, as we look from the front, you can see is the sticker pointing in a different direction, and on these it does look like the chrome is slightly different on the arms. That might just be age. The Palitoy one I have here is actually quite yellowed. You can see the skin tone is a little bit more tanned looking. That's not because he was made that way, it's because his plastic is very old, and this one was particularly particularly damaged when I picked it up. It had been sort of glued together and lots had been done to it. So I don't think that is an actual difference. If we turn them around, you can now see the main difference, which is the boots. I think the UK Palitoy version of the boots are just a little bit superior because it makes him look much more like a sci-fi character. So the US ones, they're fine, just a bit on the plain side for me. So there we go, that is it for this restoration. I need to say a massive thank you to Christopher and Carrie for sending in the remains of a Bullet Man. It's been a really fun project to work on. If you've got one yourself and you're missing that chest emblem, then go to toy-polloi.com and you can download that for free from there. And do check out my previous videos on this project. You'll see the full restoration of my UK Palitoy version of Bullet Man and how I got him looking as good as he does there. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And if you've really enjoyed it, then head on over to my second channel, toy-polloi 2, and subscribe there as well. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.